Okay. All right. Anyone else still getting in? We're all there.
Um, so I don't remember my name.
Oh,
Um,
in terms of what you picked for the site name.
yeah, so I don't know. Can't find my confirmation email. I tried to sign up again, but
It's probably saying you already have an account using that
yeah,
email.
so it says like my
Okay. Well, I mean, honestly, yes, tonight, obviously, if you've got your Moodle, that's great. If it's really not working right this minute, don't panic too much about it because I am recording this. You can obviously follow along. Nothing we're going to do tonight is something you're going to need to turn in or anything. It's just going to be about going through it. So, keep trying to get signed up and work through it, but also realize that it's not the end of the world if you just kind of follow along for tonight as we go through things. So, like I said, what you create when you create your Moodle account is a site, and they even give you your own URL, which is kind of nice if you can remember what it is. So, millermusic.moodlecloud.com. Wow, that's my own website. So they really customize it to you. So you are now the core administrator for this site. And what you do then within that site is create courses. So that is going to be the first thing that we do. That introduction to Moodle course is probably showing up for most of you. They throw that in there. It's got some information in it. It's kind of like a little mini course for introduction to Moodle. So you can leave that there if you want, or you can delete it. But it's just kind of there as a resource along with the rest of their resources. So what we're going to create tonight, if you're on, is just a test course, not the one you're going to use for your actual Moodle project, which you will create over the course of this coming week. This is just going to be kind of a sandbox where you can feel free to just try stuff out and not worry about messing anything up that's part of an actual project. So to create a new course, if you're here on your home page, it's all about the site administration, which should be over here in this sidebar. So if you go to the site administration, hello, you go on there? Waiting, there we go. This basically gives you all of the behind the scenes stuff. A lot of this we're not going to even touch in here because a lot of it goes beyond the scope of what we can cover. But some of this stuff we are going to deal with. Primarily users and courses are going to be the two main places we go. Grades, this does actually have a grade book built into it, which we'll take a bit of a look at. But I also know that a lot of us are already using some other grade management system like PowerSchool or something. So you may not necessarily want, if you're going to use this, want to get into the whole thing of setting up an entirely separate grade book. However, you can have it actually keep grades for you. So for today, for what we're doing, we're going to go to courses. And if you read quickly, you will find right down in the middle of this first list here, add a new course. And that's where you would like to go. One of the things I like about Moodle in general is that they've got a lot of help information that they try to embed all over the place. So for example, most of the information you're going to be filling in here, anywhere you see a little question mark, you can click on that and it will give you a quick little description of what the information in that field is. Or if there's options, it'll tell you what each of the options does. So I like that. So for right now, you're going to give the one thing you have to do is give the full course name. So that can include spaces, it can include other characters, things like that. So name it whatever you want to name it. I called mine, test Moodle or something like that. So whatever you feel like calling it, testing or sandbox or test course or something you will remember. And then the short course name, I believe the short course name cannot have spaces in it, I believe. So just come up with like a shortened version. If the name of your course is 4 or 5 words long, just come up with something short and brief. It'll show up in the navigation breadcrumbs and in other places like that. So pick something for these two fields for now. Course category, we're not going to do anything with that. If you end up building a lot of courses, it might be useful to start categorizing them. You can actually set up your own custom categories. I have a category 2019-2020 for courses I'm teaching this year. So things like that. But since you're only going to be putting one or two in here for now, we don't have to worry about that. Course visibility, keep this on show. But as an aside, again, if you're going to use this in the real world, hiding a course just gives you a chance to build content without your students accidentally getting a chance to see it before you're ready. I do that in our class Moodle with each week. I purposefully hide the weeks until we're ready for a week so that I have time to get everything organized and check all the links and all that before it goes out there into the world. So I'm doing my own rapid prototyping before I make it available. So you can leave that on show, but if you're, for some reason, you want to not have a course visible, but still have it built, you can do that. Start dates and end dates, you don't need to fill that information in. We'll see down a little lower, it can automatically create sections by week for your course. And if you've set up a start date and an end date, it will automatically put in the right number of sections so that there's one per week, and it'll automatically date them for you. But for what we're going to be doing in here, we're more likely to just think in terms of topics rather than weeks. But that's what that information is. Course ID number, again, that's anything that doesn't have a red exclamation mark is optional. So you don't need to necessarily fill in any of this. Course summary. If you have a bunch of courses, that would be displayed so that students can figure out which course they're supposed to sign up for, or give them a basic idea of what the course is about. You can also upload images and files. So if you've got a logo for your class that you want to have show up in the list of courses, you can add that here. That's another thing to do, but again, that's optional. So then really the key is down in this next area, which is course format. And here's where you're going to want to give a little bit of thought. Now you can go back and change this, but you're going to want to give a little bit of thought about how you want this Moodle to function. For the format, there's 4 options. Single activity. If for some reason you're using this Moodle just for one single thing, I don't know why you would necessarily do that, but maybe you've got one assessment or something that you want to have in its own little Moodle, you can set it up as a single activity format. Obviously that's pretty limited because it's really designed to then just have one thing happening. There's a social format which basically is geared if you're going to basically use this mainly as like a message board forum kind of setting. So in that case, it formats the page a little differently so that it's really geared towards posts and commenting on posts and things like that. The 2 most used ones are topics and weekly. So what this will do is, in the interest of segmenting, we'll take your Moodle and divide it up and give you sections where you can organize your content by sections. Topics is just going to be generic. You get to decide what the topics are called, how they're organized. Weekly, like I said, is going to tie into those dates. It, by default, will automatically give you a section for each week that the course runs, and will automatically title each of those weeks for you. We will probably be using the topics format in here, most likely, unless you have a real strong need to do one of the others. Number of sections, this is just an initial idea. You can always add and delete sections later on, but if you've got a rough idea of how many sections you want, you can start off by making that selection. For this purposes, I'm just going to leave it on 4. Then you have a choice about hidden sections. So just like you can hide the whole course, you can also hide individual sections. This basically says, what do you want to do with those hidden sections? Do you want the students to know that the section's there, but they just can't see what's inside it? or do you want it to be completely invisible unless you make it visible? It's up to you. That, again, that has to do with how you want your students to interact with the Moodle, what you think is going to work best, what you think is going to be least confusing. So you've got two choices there. And then the last one has to do, if you've got multiple sections, do you want, when they go to your Moodle, to see everything all in one big list, or one section per page, in which case there will be a little navigation thing that shows up that will then allow the students to pick which section they want to go to. That's, again, just a personal preference. If you've got a really big class that's got 13 sections to it and it's going to have tons of content, you might want to have just one section per page, and that'll keep the students from having to scroll through a whole bunch of stuff to get to the section you want. Or you may want everything all in one place so that your students don't get confused about where they've got to go. Choice is kind of up to you. All right. So those are the big things. There are other things down here. There's some stuff about appearance, which sounds like, oh, we could customize the look of this. That's not really what appearance is. You can actually have it force a language, so it can translate everything automatically into a different language. Things about announcements, whether the grade book is visible, things like that. So we're not going to go really through any of the remaining options here on your own. If you want to explore them, you can. But really the key things in terms of getting a new course set up are its name, a description if you want a description there, and then how you want it to format once it's on the page. All right. Anything that I ran through there relatively quickly that you want me to go over again, or that doesn't make sense? You can come back to any of this and change it even after you've created the class. So that's kind of comforting to know. All right. So once you've done all that, you would hit Save and Display. I'm actually not going to, because I already created my class. So now when you come back to your home page, you should now see your newly created class sitting there as a link. All right, thumbs up, we made it. Awesome. Okay. So in terms of the Moodle, our Can You list, we created the Moodle. We set the general title and description, or we know how to do that. We set up the format of the Moodle. I'm going to skip over participants and enrollment for right now and get sort of to the actual Moodle itself. So now we've created the class, let's actually go into it. Click into it, and you should have something that looks somewhat similar to mine. If you chose a different number of sections, you may have more topics than I do. If you went with the weekly format, you will see something that has weekly headers, date headers, instead of these topics. But it should be roughly what you're looking at here. So blank slate, here is our course. It's awesome. Students are going to learn so much from this, right? So obviously, we need to be able to do stuff to the Moodle. Right now, by default, whenever you go into the Moodle for the first time when you've logged in, it's going to be in viewing mode. So you're not going to be able to change anything. It's locked. It's just going to be reflecting whatever the last state was that you left it in when you edited. So probably the key thing is we need to be able to edit all this stuff. So the key to that is the gear guy that's up here in the top right-hand corner. When you click on that, not edit settings, we're going to come back to that in a second, but the second thing down says turn editing on. When you click on that, you're going to notice that all over the screen now, all of this other stuff pops up. So anything that's a header or a text now has a pencil next to it, so you can edit that. So a quick way, if you want to change the name of a section, is simply to click on the pencil and do it, and then it says hit enter when finished, and it will change the name of that section. So anywhere you see that pencil, that means you can edit the text that's right next to it. We will come to the add activity and resource in just a minute. You will also then see all of these things that just say edit. And when you pull those down, those are going to give you options related to that entire item. So you can hide, this is where you would hide or show a section, if that's an option. If you click on the edit for a section, you can highlight it, which will make it stand out a little bit. You can delete. So if you've got an extra section in there that you don't want, you can delete the section right here. But if you choose the edit one, this is what will take you into a page that will let you customize what is in that element. Now in this case, we're editing the section. So this is another way that I could change the section name. If I want to give a summary description of the section that will show up, I can put that in here. So anytime you hit any of those edit buttons, that will take you into kind of more advanced editing of whatever that thing is. So for example now, to back up, that gear guy at the top, if you hit edit settings there, because you're on the course header, that's how you get back to all of those settings that we just made. So if you've suddenly decided that you want to do dates instead of sections, or if you want to change the name of the course, or if you want to hide or show the course, that's the way that you get back to that now that we've actually created the class, is up there by doing edit settings. All right. So when you're done editing, you go back up, you turn editing off, and it will then take you back to the sort of locked version of it. All right. So the reason they do that, obviously, is so that people don't accidentally change things. It makes sure that you're very deliberate about when you're trying to make changes to your site and when you just want to be looking at the site, and so on. Yes? I believe with this that it does not save changes until you hit that button at the bottom of a screen. So it's not an auto save, and that's actually kind of useful because sometimes you get into something you're like, no, I didn't really mean to change that. You can just exit out of it. But yes, you do want to make sure to hit. And that's maybe one visual thing that I'm not so keen on, is that in most of the cases when you're editing something, that save button may not be visible because it's at the bottom. It'll always be at the bottom. So you usually have to scroll down to the bottom of whatever page you're editing to find the save buttons. I believe if you try to change, let me just do something real quick here. I think if you try to just exit the page, yeah, if you try to exit the page without hitting save, you will get a warning telling you that changes were made. So it's going to be hard to leave a page accidentally without saving your changes. But if your computer shuts down in the middle of it, then yeah, probably the changes you've made will be gone. So that's always also a good advertisement for saving often. So, all right, so now we've got this. We know how to go into edit mode. We know how to come out of edit mode. We know how to delete a section if we want to get rid of it by deleting the topic. If you want to add a topic, you'll notice down at the bottom of your Moodle, there's a whole separate thing that just says Add Topics. And when you do that, you can tell it how many additional sections you'd like to add. You hit Add Topics, and boom, now you've got more topics there. So that's pretty easy. Whoops, I didn't mean to have 7. I only wanted 6. Delete the topic. Now I'm back to 6. So that kind of Gesundheit, that kind of larger structure is pretty easy once you're in editing mode. The only thing I think would be kind of nice is if it gave you the option to add one right from these menus, but it's easy enough to remember that it's just down at the bottom of the page. All right, doing good still? All right, I am trying to meet my deadline, so again, just put the brakes on me if I'm going too fast. So really the main core, obviously, of something like a Moodle or a Google Classroom or a Microsoft Team or anything like that is the actual content, the stuff that you're putting in there. So when we went into edit mode, we got this for each section, add an activity or a resource. So if you click on that, it's going to pop up this menu. Top of the list is going to be all the different activities. Bottom of the menu is going to be resources. The difference basically is that resources tend to be kind of static things. That's where you would put just information or a file they need to access or a link they need to get to. The activities are mostly things that are interactive, things that are built that you can build into your page that the students will interact with right there on your Moodle. So for example, you guys are familiar now already with the forum. So if you add a forum, automatically that builds in the whole programming structure of making posts, commenting on posts, all of that kind of stuff. It's really nice because it's drag and drop and all the programming is done for you. So one of the things that again, we're going to be doing over the next several weeks, and I'll try to demonstrate, is to try to go through a bunch of these and let you see what they do. But you can also explore these on your own. And that's part of having this sandbox, is so that you can feel free to just try adding one and seeing what it does. They'll give you a brief description. So like if I click on database, it'll give you a brief description of what the database activity does. And then if you need more help, there's usually a more help button at the bottom that will take you to their website where it's got the more detailed programming. So you do get a little bit of an idea there of what each of these does. Some of them are a little bit beyond this class. A SCORM package. We're not going to get into that because getting into SCORM, those are actually external multimedia packages that you can actually then sort of drop wholesale into a Moodle. So that's a little bit beyond what the scope of this class will cover. Similarly, the big blue button is for like doing sort of web conferencing through the Moodle. So there's a few things in here that are a little bit more involved, but a lot of them we used the choice thing was what I gave you guys today when you did that quick survey on Addy. So that's you want to ask a single question and get a quick poll on something. They call that a choice. We did the forum. Quiz, you can set up a quiz to do a quick poll, or even more in depth, you can actually set up question banks where it'll create quizzes out of your question bank for you. So there's a lot to choose from here, and I've used a lot of these in different situations. And then, like I said, the resources tend to be then just static things. A PDF you want your students to be able to get, you would put that in a file resource. If there's a link you want them to be able to go to, that would be a URL resource. The page gets used a lot. That's basically like creating your own web page. That will allow you to kind of create and format whatever content you want, kind of in the way that you would with a web page. So there's a lot to choose from here. And obviously tonight we don't have time to sort of even get into this, but I would encourage you over the next week as you start working on your actual Moodle to also find some time to just kind of poke through these. So for example, I'm just going to create a page just to throw something in here if you want to create a page or something similar. So whenever you add an activity or add a resource, it's going to bring up the details page for that activity or resource. They're obviously going to be different depending on what you've picked. So it's mainly just a matter of kind of reading down through the fields and deciding what needs to be filled in. Some of them will be mandatory and others are optional. So this page, I might just call it test page 1. I'm being really creative with my names tonight, you can tell. And the content is going to be blah diddy blah blah blue. There's my content. Anytime there's text, there's all of these formatting options for the text. There's even more options if you click on this little arrow. We'll go through a lot of this stuff, but a lot of it's the same stuff you would have in Word. You can change the size of the text. You can bold it. You can italicize it. You can do bulleted and numbered lists. You can add links if you want to embed a hyperlink. You can put in movies and images and even sound recordings and videos. So this would be, this toolbar would be where you would put in, if you want to do any formatting. Diddy really should be bolded, because why not? So that's any text box on pretty much any Moodle page will have that at the top to allow you to format the text. It's what they call rich text formatting. And then a lot of times there will be a bunch of additional things, and a lot of times you can ignore most of those. There are usually additional elements that get into more detailed things. But I've created my page, I hit save and return to course, and now within my section 1, I now have this test page number 1. Simple as that. Want to add another one? I don't know. I'll add a URL and test URL, and I'm just going to do, oops, I think it's S, YouTube. Okay, so I add in that and I save that. So now I've got 2 pieces of content in this section. So really you just start going in, and once you have your design in place and once you know what you're trying to achieve, you start figuring out what's the best way to deliver that through all these different options. All right. Once they're there, you can reorganize things. You've probably already figured out that the little double arrow, that allows you to reorganize things. So within a Moodle or within a section, you can drag things into a different order simply by dragging them past each other. You can even reorganize your section. So I could put section 1 second, and then it'll rename the rest of them if I haven't given them names. So you can even reorganize whole sections in your Moodle if you want to do that. So anything that's got that double arrow next to it, you can move those items around. Another fun thing that you can do visually on the page, once you've created an item, if you click on its edit, one of the options will say move right. And that essentially will tab that item over a little bit. So if you have within a section like a header or a title, and then you've got content under that, you can actually indent the content to make it a little more visually obvious or visually efficient. You can also hide individual items. So you as an instructor might want to put a resource in here that only you can see, something you might want to click on during a class, but you don't necessarily want your students to have access to. So if it's hidden, you'll see it, you can access it, but your students won't see it from their side. You can also duplicate. I use this a lot when I'm going from one section to the next, because there will be things that I want to have in every section. So I'll just duplicate it and then drag it into the other section. And then you can obviously also delete items as well, just by picking delete. Again, the edit settings, just like it did with the whole course, if I'm on an item and I hit edit settings, that takes you back to that detail page where you can then change things or alter things and then resave them. So that's kind of the cycle of this program, is you create the course, you kind of get the structure for the course in place, how many units are you using or how many lessons or topics, that kind of stuff. And then once that structure's in place, then you start filling in the content in each section. And as you go, you're formatting each of those elements to do what it needs to do, formatting the stuff on the page so that your students are seeing the content the way you want them to see it. All right. Last thing for tonight in here, I'm gonna hold off talking about users and enrollment and participants until maybe next week. But the last thing I want to point out is I'm going to exit editing mode. So I'm back looking at it. But what you're looking at here is still not necessarily going to be what your students are looking at, because you're seeing a lot of stuff on the side that really is just going to relate to you. If you've got hidden sections or you've got hidden items, you will still be seeing them. So one thing that Moodle gives you the ability to do is to view the page as if you were a different user. So if you go up to the very top right-hand corner, not the gear guy, but way up where your name is, and you click on that, the bottom option there says switch role to. And if you click on that, it's going to give you all of the sort of roles that people can have within Moodle. The one I always go to is student. And if you click on that, you will then be viewing the page exactly the same way your students will be viewing it. So anything that you would see here is what your students will see. Anything they can click on, or anything you'll see here that can be clicked on, is something they can click on. So I always like to do this before I sort of deploy something for real, just to check to make sure that I haven't left something hidden that shouldn't be, or vice versa, or anything like that. So it really gives you a chance, again, in that rapid prototyping environment, to quickly take a look at the site as if you were the student and make sure that everything is working the way that it's supposed to work. So that's a nice thing. And it'll say up in the top, it'll say, like in my case, David Miller, student, telling you that you are currently acting as if you were a student. If you click back up there, the option will turn to return to my normal role, which your normal role would be as the teacher. You click on that, and it will take you back to what it would look like from your perspective. Right? So that's another little feature just to kind of be aware of. All right, so looking at the Can You list, we just covered everything on the Can You list with the exception of managing participants and enrollments. Like I said, I'm going to push that off because I want to make sure we get through the homework and I can answer any questions you have and so on. But anything I just went over that is confusing, that I went by too quickly? It's largely drag and drop, which is nice. All of the programming has already been done by Moodle. You really now can focus on your instructional design plan and decide what you want to use from what Moodle's offering in order to deliver the content that you want to deliver. And you have a lot of control over how it's formatted and what you use and what it looks like and how the students interact with it and so on. How many of you in here are Google Classroom users? I know we had a couple people. So there's a lot of similarities, right? It's sort of the same type of thing where Google Classroom gives you a lot of different things that you can plug into a course, and then your students are interacting with that content. This is just another framework for that same kind of thing. All right. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions at this point, again, feel free, and I encourage you as much as possible to just kind of play around. Honestly, for me, that's usually the best way to learn a piece of software, is just to start poking under the hood and seeing what happens. You can't really mess anything up, especially if you're just working in this test site, because the worst comes to worst, you just delete whatever you created and start over, or even create a new course. But that'll give you a good place to really kind of just try things out, see what options are available, get a sense of how things work. Take a look at some of those sample Moodles, join some of those sample Moodles that I put up on our webpage. Again, they're going to look a little different, but most of the same activities and the same content and the same stuff is going to be in those sites as you have here in Moodle Cloud. So it'll give you an idea, looking at some different students' work, about how they approached creating their content and so on. All right, so that was our two big topics for the night. So let's talk homework. Homework. Basically, the homework this week is all focused on one thing. There's a couple of aspects to it, but I'm trying to keep it all focused on kind of getting the Moodle projects underway. So here we go. Thing number one is your ID plan. That's your ADDIE work. Part one. We're not going to do the entire ADDIE. We're not even going to cover all of the first A and D, but we're going to get started on it at least. So I've created a forum. So eventually you'll be posting your Addy design work to the forum and then looking at other people's and giving them some assistance. But the main thing is you're going to have to choose a subject, a topic. And that may be the toughest thing or maybe not. We are looking for something contained in scope. So don't pick an entire unit on, the American Civil War. That's probably a little bit too big of a topic for this. We're looking for something that's, in rough terms, going to have about 5 topics to it, or 5 sections, or 5 lessons, however you want to think of it. So something in that scope. So if you teach your classes every day, sort of like 1 week's worth of a subject area. So something in that range. So figure something out. Again, if you are in the classroom right now, feel free to take something you already teach and try to move it into this format. If you're not in the classroom, pick something related to the coursework you're doing or to whatever work you're involved with. Whatever. For me, the topic is not really that critical as long as you get something out of it and it's something that's going to be useful for you. So on the forum page, I'll just jump over there real quick, is what I've done is I've basically given you a template. So basically from here on down, there's a series of sections or topics or questions. My idea is that you go into something like Microsoft Word, you copy and paste this text into Microsoft Word, and then in Word you type up your responses and your answers. Then when you're done with that, you can copy and paste that back into the forum. That way you're not typing in the forum, which I know is a pain. So do your work in Word. You're going to want to have it set as a separate document anyway. And then once you've completed it all, come back to the forum, just copy and paste in, and then your forum post will be done. So it's going to be things like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What is needed? This isn't what materials are needed. A needs assessment is what is the thing that is going to help you solve the problem. I need an instructional Moodle that will cover this material, something along those lines. Your audience, so you're going to tell me a little bit about who you're creating your Moodle for, what's their age, what's their background, things like that. Your learning outcomes, so that's what students will be able to. And then content, roughly. I'm not looking for super detail here, but as much detail as you think is necessary to talk about what you're covering. Is it linked to any state or national standards? You can mention those. That's really all of our A. And then for design, really all I want you to think about is instructional strategies. And in the Moodle, I've provided links to 3 pages that have hundreds of instructional strategies on them if you don't know or you want to brainstorm some strategies. So try to pick a list of 6 to 10 to 15 or so different instructional strategies that you think might work. You don't necessarily have to end up using all of them, but just to kind of think through that. And then think a little bit about how you're going to evaluate. Again, you're not actually creating a test, but what are you going to do in order to know whether your students have met the learning outcomes? Okay, so that gives us the A and the beginnings of the D for your Moodle projects. So that's thing number 1. Thing number 2, in your Moodle, now that you've set up your test class, set up your actual Moodle project class. So basically do what we just did in here, but once you know what your topic is, obviously title the Moodle with an appropriate topic heading. And just go as far as, I just say title the Moodle, put in a photo and a quick introduction to yourself. A good thing to do with any sort of an online teaching resource is to try to personalize it. Otherwise, it just looks like a web page and the students have no connection to you. So just like a little headshot and a quick little, hi, I'm so-and-so and I teach blah, 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 can go a long way to just sort of helping your students connect with the material that's going to be on there. So you don't have to put anything in the content. You don't even necessarily need to know how many sections you're going to need or what those sections are going to be called. just get the course itself set up and title it and get a little bit of an introduction at the top. Then there is a chapter, and again, it's linked here. I try to put links in the homework to each of the sub things. This is from a book called E-Learning and the Science of Instruction, and it's about segmenting, the segmenting principle and pre-training. And you don't have to do anything with this week other than just read it. We'll do discussion of it next as part of next week's class. So just read through it. It will start to hopefully give you some ideas about taking your topic and how you're going to divide that topic or that subject up into subtopics. That's mainly the point of this, is to just give you some background into some of the research and some of the thinking behind segmenting and how much you should do and how you should decide how to segment and so on. So all three of those things are all about getting your Moodle project started. So you're going to do a little bit of design work, post that to the forum, going to get your Moodle class set up, just the very initial setup, and then read a little bit about segmenting, which will feed into then deciding how you're going to organize your content. The only other thing I threw in here is just there's no additional forum this week for response. So there's a lot of great conversations already happening from the forum from last week. I've really been enjoying reading through some of the questions that were brought up. And I'm already seeing a lot more engagement in terms of back and forth, which is exactly what I wanted to see. So just over the course of this week, if you've already made your post, then that's awesome. Maybe just once or twice over the week, just check back in, see if somebody's posted something more recently that you could respond to, or if somebody has responded to your post and you feel like you want to write something back. So just in lieu of having a new forum for this week, just kind of keep that one going as needed, right? Nothing specific about it, but I just, like I said, already the quality of the conversations I'm seeing is improved over what I've tended to see in the past with these forums. So I would just love to see that keep going. And there's some really great topics that you guys brought up in those questions that probably deserve even some more time. And I may pull some of them out for further discussion as we go down the road. All right, so that's it. You don't have to do anything on your PLN this week unless you, for some reason, didn't get your PLN done this week. It's really all focused on getting the Moodle project going. And that's kind of that. So questions, comments, criticisms, critiques, cucumbers, craziness. All right. Well, as I said at the beginning, you've got at least 3 different ways you can contact me if you feel the need. So please, if you have any questions or concerns as you go through the week, let me know. We do meet next week, although I know we've got one person not here for conferences and another that may be a little late. The week after is a week we won't be on campus. So just that's still 2 weeks out, but just to give you that heads up, that's a week that we will be doing everything online for that week and not meeting here on campus. But I will see folks next week. All right, thank you all. Just log out of your computers, tidy up a little bit as you go, and I will see everybody in a week. Or 2 weeks. Have fun at your conferences or whatever they are. Open house usually comes.